One Piece chapter 1080, the legendary hero. Now once you have a title like this, you know Garp is about to go off, which he did, and this chapter for me was honestly great because it confirmed a lot of things for us in terms of Sword, the Blackbeard pirates, and of course Garp. Again, one thing I've always complained about One Piece was the underuse of Marines. The show has focused so much on pirates that we don't really know the structure of the Marines and how they operate. And in this chapter, we get a clear glimpse as to what Sword's position is within the Marines, and it's a very interesting one. Again, us getting to see the Marines in action, you guys already know how I feel about the Marines, and the Admirals, easily one of my favorite factions in all of One Piece, and to have a chapter dedicated to all of that was amazing. But you can really tell that this is the final saga when Oda actually goes through with some of the build-up that he's created, because now he's actually showing things. It feels almost unreal. The fact that we're seeing Garp finally in action is kind of insane. So from what it seems like, Oda is finishing these plot points or subplot points that were introduced alongside Egghead. So as of right now, it seems that we're done with Shanks one because Kid was absolutely decimated. So we might focus on Hachinosu a bit more and see what comes out of that. And then finally, we will be moving back to Egghead to deal with that situation over there. So I wonder if we're going to get a concrete answer here as to what is going to happen on Hachinosu. Will it be as definitive as what happened to Kid? We're not sure because Garp has just been a very important character to the story, but at the same time, you can't really have all of Blackbeard's crew get decimated and wiped off the map. So it's very tough right now. But given how Oda handled Kid, something might happen to Garp here. We're seeing people actually lose now. Ever since Kaido was defeated, no one is protected anymore. But before we keep going, guys, I'd appreciate it if you dropped a like on this video. Let's try to go for 500 likes as usual. Hit the bell if you want to get notified for more content on this channel, and subscribe if you are new here. Now let's start with the elephant in the room, and of course that is Garp appearing at Hachinosu. And this could technically be a top 5 entrances in the story. This man pulled a Luffy in Marineford where he had the ship flying atop of the island. I'm not sure how they got there, but he basically bulldozed his ship right into the center of Hachinosu, and he came in with a crazy attack. And this attack is confirmation for a lot of things people have been speculating about, which I think has been very obvious since the beginning of the story. And this essentially confirms Garp as a Conquerors HAKI user. Some people were unsure that Garp would have Conquerors HAKI because he was a Marine or because he was technically under the world government. But that was shut down really quickly when they revealed that Sengoku had Conquerors HAKI. So Garp having Conquerors HAKI was becoming more accepted. But even then, some people were skeptical because in one of the Vivid card, it doesn't mention that Garp had Conquerors HAKI, right? And again, I think Oda was waiting for a moment to actually reveal it in the main story, and this chapter definitely confirmed that he is not just a regular Conquerors HAKI user, but he's capable of Conquerors HAKI infusion as well. And we see something that we haven't seen with any other character with this ability, because when Garp arrived, he was able to use Conquerors HAKI from a distance, not relying on any sword or technique. This was him using his fist to create a projectile attack, and that's something that we haven't seen from anyone else so far, with the exception of Zoro, because again with Zoro and Swordsman, they use flying slashes. They can imbue that with Conquerors HAKI, but that's an exception because they're using a sword. But in this case, it's just pure Haki mastery, and of course using it unarmed. Most top tiers of old and new for some reason always have weapons, but Garp is the only exception to all of those top tiers. If anything, this shows that he's exceptionally special at using Ryo, because we know that one of the stages of Ryo is to hit things from a distance. We saw it when Luffy used it against a tree, in comparison to Garp where he's literally miles away from his target. It shows that Garp is probably a master of armament Haki and can use it in ways that we have never seen from any other character. So seeing Garp use Galaxy Fist here and named attack for the first time in the entire series was godlike. It honestly really shows that the Whitebeard pirates had no chance of winning Marineford. The Marines were so dominant that Garp and Sengoku didn't really have to do much. Again, Garp was one of Roger's rivals for a reason, and there's no way you wouldn't think that he was capable of something like this. So in terms of me being surprised by this level of strength, not much so, but it's more so me of seeing it in actuality that's game changing. So again, this doesn't really change anything for me, but I have never underestimated Garp, so the Garp hype is definitely real. Now, we did see that he did come here for Kobe, and again, this was because he values Kobe to be the future of the Marines. And I think several scenes that we have seen before, especially the one at Marineford, is probably the one that made Garp really impressionable of Kobe. And even before then, he took them as disciples. So Garp obviously sees something within Kobe, a potential that could rival his later on in the story. Because Kobe, as of right now, seemingly has the title that Garp also has, because people are calling Kobe the hero. And some people also call him the saint in this chapter. So we're seeing here that Garp is thinking of the next generation, and we're seeing Kobe building up his own legacy as well. Now, moving on to the Marines, we get an extensive detail on Sword, one that we haven't really gotten before. Now, first and foremost, most of the Marines that came to this island were a part of Sword. One of them happens to be Hibari, which was the girl that we saw previously in one of the bases, and she's apparently a sniper who uses flower bullets, which are special ammunitions that disable guns, and there also seems to be an emphasis on her having the same dialect as Akainu, so there might be some connections there. We do also get to see Prince Groose, which was again the commander that we saw at the base, and he is a devil fruit user as well, more than likely a paramecia who ate the squelch fruit, which essentially makes him a clay man, and it seems like he's able to mold his body or produce clay, which is very similar to Katakuri's ability, and he was responsible for essentially rounding up most of the Blackbeard fodders into the town center. And his control is amazing because this is very similar to what Doflamingo was doing, where he was creating clones with his ability, because he essentially made an army of clay people, and they were pushing back all the fodders in the center of the town because none of them could actually damage it, because they would just reform. And I think that honestly shows devil fruit mastery. Now, we do also get to see Suru's granddaughter here, and she's essentially a rear admiral who is a tamer person and has the whip fruit. She also seems to be a dom, considering her ability, kind of similar to Sadie from Impel Down. But what's really interesting about her ability is that she's able to tame inanimate objects, and this is how she was able to move the buildings around, because she's taming the buildings. So she might be awakened. Again, considering that we know that being synchronized with your devil fruit in some way, shape, or form could make you awaken, it's very possible. I do find it interesting that some of these sword members have ties to the upper echelons of the Marines. Hibari might be connected to Akainu, Kobe is connected to Garp, and then we have Fujiku, who is connected to Suru. So it seems like Sword is definitely a new generation sort of things because of the restrictions they have with the world government. So I feel like this is something that was definitely implemented by one of the older Marines, right? Garp, Sengoku, Suru might have all played a part in this, and possibly Akainu as well, because we do have that one panel where he has a sword tattoo on his arm. And one of the more interesting things that we learned about Sword in this chapter was when Kobe was initially captured by Blackbeard, because Blackbeard wanted to use Kobe as a bargaining chip to trade him off for making Hachinosu a government-affiliated nation. But Aokiji essentially tells us that sword members are individuals who have technically resigned from their commission, which in return allows them to ignore certain command protocols issued by the world government. So by that statement, they can essentially attack Yonkos without having authorization. Again, which is what Garp is doing. And if you remember, during Egghead, CP0 could only make a move against a Yonko till they were authorized. So Sword is basically the Marines' way of doing what they want when they want to do it, on top of having some resources from the world government. And it doesn't seem to be as covert as we thought, because it seems like the world government is aware of this, but they don't really take any actions because maybe it benefits them. And so because of that fact that Kobe is a sword member, Blackbeard couldn't necessarily use him as a bargaining chip for this plan that Blackbeard had. I also like how Kobe has a bounty on top of his head as well. Again, it adds more to the concept of cross guild. I like how that's been implemented into the story, which makes you wonder what the bounties are going to be for like the admirals or like the fleet admiral, or even individuals like Garp and Sengoku. We might even see that. And that could be correlations to his bounty if he was a pirate. So I like where Oda is taking this. And moving back to Kobe here, the only reason that he was released was because Perona was there looking for Moria. And in return for releasing Kobe, Kobe agreed that he would help in releasing Moria. So it seems like Perona and Moria more than likely have already escaped. Possibly, I'm not sure yet. They could still be on the island, but more than likely not. Now, on the other side of things, we have the Blackbeard pirates, and here we get information on the remaining captains that we don't really know much about in terms of their devil fruit ability, and here we get a confirmation for all of them. So currently on the island, they only have 4 commanders, and the 4 commanders being Vasco Shot, Shiryu, Sandro and Wolf, and finally Avalo Pizarro. Now, we already knew that Shiryu had the invisible fruit based on the events we saw in one of the earlier transitions back in Wano. Avalo Pizarro has the island fruit, which is a crazy fruit to think about because it seems like it's a more evolved version of Pika's fruit, because it seems like Avalo Pizarro is essentially the island himself and he can manipulate anything on the island. So I feel like this fruit was definitely given to him by Blackbeard because of its territorial advantage. This was definitely a Blackbeard move. Then we have Vasco Shot, who has the Glug Glug fruit, or I guess you could also call it the alcohol devil fruit. Now, we don't really know the whole spectrum of it, but it's obviously tied to alcohol, and he does mention that he wanted to burn down the town, so it seems like he can make some sort of flammable alcohol that causes some sort of explosion with his ability. And it is possible that he might have already had his devil fruit beforehand because he was always drinking, or it could have been that Blackbeard gave him that devil fruit specifically because it fits his personality, which would lead him to become awakened. So this is really interesting. And then finally we have Sandro and Wolf, who is a giant that ate the big fruit, which is insane because he is essentially big. Getting bigger than what he already is kind of insane. And again, this is another character where I think he had his devil fruit beforehand, because I think that this was explained in one of the river cards, and I do believe that in the pre-time skip he was always getting weak in the sea, but again, he could survive because he was a giant, so his legs was reaching the bottom of the ocean, so he could never drown at that point. So Sandro and Wolf is definitely scary when you think about it in terms of just sheer scale, but at the same time, Avalo Pizarro having the ability to become the island is also insane. A lot of these devil fruits that they have are very utility based and are made for situations to stall people, defend, and essentially do a lot of trickery, which falls in line with the theme of the Blackbeard pirates. Now, what's really interesting about this situation is that there are essentially only 4 commanders versus Olive Sword. Now, I will say that the Blackbeard pirates are more top heavy in terms of having commanders that are relative in level, because the only person stronger than those 4 commanders is essentially only Garp himself, with the potential of Kobe being potentially stronger than at least one of them, but it seems like those 4 commanders are only second to Garp himself. Now, we do also see Tashigi here, so Smoker might be on board as well, and that changes a lot of things. But when you look at it, it's actually a lot even than we thought, because even though Garp is very top heavy here, they can easily do some teamwork with their devil fruit ability to do some trickery here and there to somewhat get around Garp, right? But obviously that's where other Marines come into play to defend Garp from these things happening. I feel like it's going to be a standstill for a bit, and we might even see Garp taking some of the commanders out, but I do think that eventually at some point Blackbeard is going to show up, and it's going to be where Garp could be defeated or even killed. We don't necessarily know what direction it's going to take, but there are some death flags on Garp right now. But again, before he gets taken out, we are going to see somewhat of a full powered Garp. Even though that he's older, we're going to see him sort of revive that prime Garp spirit once again, even though it might be for a short amount of time. And again, I personally see Garp putting some fear into Blackbeard like Whitebeard did. And again, this is assuming that Garp gets killed or defeated here. We don't know how things are going to turn out, but it is a very interesting chain of events for sure. And again, when it comes to Garp, I'll leave off with this SBS answer that Oda gave in one of his questions. I like old men. When men and women get older, their character becomes richer and deeper. There are a lot of interesting people, but on a realistic note, they tend to get physically weaker. On the other hand, I hate younger people who look down as well as make fun of them and can't appreciate them ever since. So I wonder if only all the Gramps and Grannies out there didn't lose their strength, how cool would they be? That's one of the fantasies I'd like to realize with One Piece. So again, even though Garp is old, I think we're gonna see Garp bring back that prime Garp spirit once again, and this will shock everybody. But that is pretty much it for this video, guys. I'd appreciate it if you dropped a like on this video, hit the bell if you want to get notified for more content, subscribe if you're new to the channel, comment down below what you guys think, and again, you can follow me on Twitter at Ferrospace. But it is Ferro, guys, and I will see you folks later. Peace.